We've spent the last two videos talking about the app that we're going to build, so I think that's enough talking for now. Let's dive into it. Let's start putting this application together. So, as you recall, I already started up my server inside of our new Pix project directory, and I started up my code editor inside of there as well. And I can very easily open up my browser, go to localhost 3000, and I should see a new React application appear on the screen. So now inside my code editor, I'm going to open up that src directory. As usual, we've got all those default files inside there. So I'm going to highlight all those, and I'm going to delete them entirely. And then inside my src folder, I'm going to make a index.js file as usual. And then at the top, we'll put together same boilerplate that we put together inside the index.js file all throughout this course. We'll say import React from React, import React DOM from React DOM, and then usually inside of here, we would create an app component. But this time around, we're going to do things a little bit differently. You see, as I mentioned in the last video, we're going to end up with a couple of different components inside this application. And for these different components, we're going to end up having to make one or two different CSS files as well. So in total, we're going to end up with a decent number of files inside this src directory. So rather than just throwing all these different files directly into the src directory, we're going to try to impose a little bit more structure in this project. To that end, inside my src folder, I'm going to make a new folder called components. And we're going to end up creating all of the different components that we create inside of that folder, instead of just the src directory. Now this includes the app component as well. So rather than defining the app component inside of our index.js file, we will make a separate file inside the components directory called app.js, and that will create our app component. This is a very common pattern. Even though we've been putting our app component directly in the index.js file, you're going to see that later on in this course, when we start talking about topics like Redux and whatnot, we're going to end up having a lot of setup code inside of the index.js file, besides just the app that we had before. So rather than putting a ton of setup code inside of the index.js file and defining a component, we can kind of break things up a little bit to make it more understandable by putting the app component into its own separate file in the components directory. So with all that in mind, inside this new components folder, I'm going to make a file called app.js. And then inside there, we'll very quickly put together some scaffolding for this component, import it back into index.js, and then show it on the screen. So inside this file, I'll do a import React from React, and then I'll make a functional component that will return a div with text app, and then I'll do an export default app, like so. And then back inside of the index.js file, I can now import that new component. So I'll say import app from. Now remember, before, with every import statement we did for a file that we wrote, we just said / and then the file name. But this time around, to get to that app file, we would say in the current directory, so still /, look in the components folder, and then get the app.js file. So I would say / components app, like so. So then after that, now that we've got the reference to the app component, we can attempt to show it on the screen with a React DOM.render app. And then as usual, we'll pass a reference to our div with ID root that is shown inside that index.html file. So as a second argument, I'll say document.query selector pound root. And I'm going to put that on a second line just so you can see it very easily. All right, now I'm going to save this file. When I do, this line of code is going to jump. And now we can flip back over to our application, and I should see the little tiny text up here on the left-hand side that says app. Okay, so this looks good. Let's take a quick pause right here. We'll continue in the next section with just a little bit more setup.